Thursday, our Thursday Facebook Live. We have myself, Coach Jennifer, and Coach Nancy, and we are joined with two of our HMR clients, Emily and Debbie. And tonight, we are going to, of course, hear of their journey, but we are going to get their input on our topic and looking at tough times and hearing some empowering perspectives when you are facing these tough times ahead. And we're all going to be able to relate to this because it happens. Facing those tough times when maybe your weight isn't going in the direction that you want it to go, maybe you're not motivated to be physically active, or you just feel out of control with your eating. And it's during times like these, we can find ourselves wanting to throw in the towel, to give up. And tonight, we are going to talk about some perspectives for you to keep in mind during these tough times. And our hope is that you find at least one that you can really resonate with and find helpful, that you can keep in mind maybe the next time that you're having a tough time, or maybe you're joining us tonight and you're having a tough time right now and you need this perspective tonight. So make sure you're settling in, because you're not going to want to miss a minute of this episode. But before we dive into our topic, we have to meet our guests.
Yes, so we have Deborah and Emily. Really glad that you're joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit here to get started. And one thing that, as we met with you last week and talked to you, one thing that you both have in common is your history with the program goes back pretty significantly. So, you know, Debbie, it's been 15 years when you first joined HMR, and Emily, 18 years, I think, at this point. So let's start with you, Deb. And again, so you joined HMR about 15 years ago, you lost 60 pounds, and then start us back with, you left for a while. Tell us, pick it up from there and tell us a bit about your story.
During that short 15 years, I began to have some physical issues, and consequently through that process, I had to take steroids, I had joint degeneration, and slowly the weight started coming back on. And then you just kind of return to your old ways, and it just started slipping away. And then once I was debilitated enough to be on a cane with my back, and then my knees started bothering me and my ankles started bothering me. I had all these skeletal issues. I was on a walker. So for about 2 years, I had been on a walker or cane or in a wheelchair. And then I had to have a rebuild of my ankle. And by the time I was in rehab, I had really hit the plateau of the highest weight I'd ever had. And at that point, I knew I could not make it through the rehab or any further improvement without improving my weight. It was just causing me that much problem. So during that time, I went ahead and I said, okay, I'm going back to HMR. I know it works. I know it works for me. I had looked at every other possibility, and I just knew that the accountability that came with the program the first time was what I needed. And so I came right back to it. I had my food ordered, came home from the hospital, and I told my husband, I said, bring me an entree, my fruit and my vegetables, and I'm good. And it was easy for him. He knows exactly to rip the corner, put it in the box for a minute.
He got him trained.
He has it all figured out, and it made a huge difference. He was able to help me more with what I was eating, and I was able to eat and still reduce calories and reduce the weight that I needed to get off to help with the rehab. And that's where we are today, because now I've been back in it for, I guess, right at 1.5 to 2 years.
And you're now in phase 2, right?
I am in phase 2, but I went back to the first boot camp that we had in the fall. That helped me lose another 10 or 12 pounds at the time. And I have really seen a difference in my mindset and my ability to stay with the program this time. And I think it goes back to staying in longer and understanding more of who I am and what I can eat to maintain. And I've learned just things I knew before, but I look at them differently now than I did then. And I can maintain so much better than I did before. And now I need to lose some more.
But where you are in your journey, you're way more mobile and free of pain than you were before you came back to HMR, right?
Absolutely. I am now very active with my grandkids. I've retired from one job, and now we have our own business. And so my husband and I take care of that. And I have an Airbnb that keeps me real busy. And, but I have 10 grandkids, and most of them are very small, and we're in Little League and Cub Scouts. And I made it a 4-day Disney trip in the fall and walked 20,000 steps a day and kept up with everybody. So
Wow.
I feel like I've made huge strides with my health. And I know it's direct result of having lost the weight.
That's like just so, I'm thinking of Disney where you might have had to be in a wheelchair for 4 days. There's so much walking, and here you were walking around and keeping up with the kids. But
Just not even have gone.
Well, my kids
Yeah.
said, Mom, do we need to get you a little cart? And I went, no, I don't need a cart. I can walk. I'm capable of doing that now. So I think I kind of outdid them a few times. So
yeah, that's when you
good
done.
about it.
So just thanks for sharing that, and we'll hear more. But just such a wonderful story of where you are in your journey.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you share about your phase 1 experience, Debbie, with your husband? And I know Kate was talking about making sure you shared your partner. Did you share? Okay,
I
that's
did.
great.
He's was very supportive and has been through the whole process, but it really has been good and easy to do.
That's great.
So let's move on and hear from Debbie, right?
Emily.
Let's do Emily now.
Let's go, Emily. Debbie may want to go again. So Emily, your story is a bit different than Debbie's, but it goes to show no matter where you are in your life, HMR can support you with your goals that you really want to accomplish. And Emily, your weight loss journey with HMR started in 2004. And HMR has grown with you through all of your life's changes. You are now a busy mom of 2, a teacher, and recently started working on your master's. And so, Emily, start us off with your top reasons for joining the HMR program back in the day, and even for coming back. What was your top reasons?
Well, I had a connection to HMR. My mom worked for one of the clinics, and she had probably been there for at least 4 years before I joined, and I saw her successes in getting in shape and just healthier. And so I decided to join. I had gained weight over college, and while I was an active person and felt like I was fairly healthy, I just had some weight that I couldn't get rid of. And I knew I needed some help. So started with phase 1. I probably 6 weeks or so, lost 10 pounds and went right into phase 2 and continued for probably a short bit, less than a year, because then I got pregnant and had my son. And so I think, having lost that weight helped me have a healthy pregnancy, and then was not in HMR for several years. Not sure when I joined back in, but and I just continued with phase 2. Every time that I've rejoined, it's been phase 2, because I was able to be successful and, still be able to indulge a little bit but keep myself on track. And then the last 5 years, I've been faithful with my attendance. So,
Yeah, always attending. And I know, initially you wanted to just feel better being active, like be more
yeah.
comfortable skiing, hiking, your aerobic classes. So you were already active, but you wanted to be even more comfortable to be able to do those things that you enjoyed. And I know you mentioned that from 2011 to 2016, you were kind of in and out of HMR. And you noticed that when you did kind of step away, that was the time that you started, your physical activity started declining. You had your weight kind of creeping back on. And so when you did rejoin back in 2016, you have been very consistent each and every single week and have been maintaining your weight. And also through this challenging time, which of course we're going to be getting to that later on, but you've been able to keep up a lot of the healthy behaviors. And I know you mentioned you enjoyed the flexibility of phase 2 and having your meals with your family. And so what would you say? You mentioned having a healthier pregnancy, getting in shape, and what were some of your experiencing it in your life that made all the work commitment worth it, and you still keep coming? Why is it worth it?
Well, I can actually remember after I'd done the phase 1 initially, that winter I had joined a women's ski clinic, and that was the best year of skiing in my life because I was really fit and my legs weren't screaming at me by lunchtime. I just could ski all day, and I was skiing steeper runs and more powder, and it was just fantastic. And so that was, when I think back to that, it was like, oh yeah, I need to get back to that point again, but I'm just not at that point in my life right now, as we'll talk about later.
Yeah, we have those seasons in life when we can do different things. And I love this picture that you shared of on your mountain bike coming down, and just when it's beautiful, it's a beautiful picture. And I know something that you really enjoy, and that was a big reason why you wanted to lose the 10 pounds. And so just really goes to show that you can do HMR if you have 10 pounds to lose to 300 pounds to lose. We're going to help you in whatever your goals are. And more importantly, we're going to really help to support you to keep the weight off. And you can use any aspect of the program that you need to continue with your journey, like Debbie's going to be talking about here in just a little while. So let me.
Excuse me, just 1 minute. I think, Emily, one of the things that I appreciate you is your decision to stay with the program almost as an insurance policy, so that you're not gaining weight. And, you had mentioned, what you're noticing with colleagues that you work with.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I often wonder, should I stick with this? It's like, well, what if I didn't? Where would I be if I hadn't been so regular for the last 5 years? Would I have gained, 25, 30 pounds? Because it's so easy. I'm a teacher, and the teacher's lounge is full of all kinds of goodies. And there were 4 dozen donuts in the teacher's lounge today. And so,
it's, and I think that's it. Sometimes we forget that piece of it, is like, what would I be doing if I weren't in the program? So
and
huge.
when I started my master's in May, I seriously considered, just putting HMR on a hold, because
You're busy.
I'm not, my numbers aren't where they should be or where they have been in the past. But it was like, no, if I quit, I know it's just gonna creep, the weight's gonna creep back on, and I just will feel awful,
And honestly, when you think about it, which we're going to talk more about it later, no one would blame you if you stepped away, because you are a full-time, you teach, you're a mom of 2 and working on your master's, and you have chickens and animals to take care of. So nobody would have even questioned. Oh yeah, Emily, she's busy. Yeah, she's going to take a break. She'll come back. But doing something, which again, we're going to talk about here in a moment, is really important. And one thing that we want to mention is that on our Facebook Live events, we often invite guests who share their successes in the program, all the changes that they've made, the improvements. And we understand that it can be easy to feel less successful when you're comparing yourself to these amazing stories. So maybe you're watching for the first time and you're considering joining HMR, or maybe you're in your first month, or maybe you're in month 2. You're not necessarily where Debbie and Emily are. We can't compare our beginning to someone else's ending or middle. So we want to keep that in mind. And I know we can all relate to having the experience of things just not going so well. So tonight we are going to be discussing 3 perspectives that we feel can be helpful when you are experiencing these tough times. And it's important to keep in mind that we're all going to have these highs and lows. Any person that's working to make changes are going to have highs and lows. And as we go through each of these perspectives, like I mentioned earlier, we want you to, see which ones you can relate to, but also make sure you're sharing your own experience and perspective. So we want to hear from you. Even though we are hearing from Emily and Debbie, we want you to be in the comments and sharing your experiences with these perspectives, or maybe you have caught yourself in some of the things that we are going to be mentioning. And also, if something stands out to you that you want to keep on your list when you face these tough times, tell us. Tell us which one is really resonating with you. And so we're going to be hearing from all of us who are on the screen and in the comments how we've gotten through these tough times.
All right, so let's get started. So again, let's start with the first perspective, and Jen, you're going to share it so people can see what it is. So the goal is progress, not perfection. All right, so that's the perspective. Progress, not perfection. And, we're all hard on ourselves, right? So it's pretty easy to want to shoot for protection or perfection, right? It's like to think that anything less than ideal, whatever ideal is in your head, and of course we have our own image of what ideal is not good enough, right? It's not good enough. We didn't hit that ideal. So let's talk about that, and really the problems that can come up if you're always, expecting perfection and not feeling like you're doing well if you're not there. So Deb, let's start with you, and how you would relate to this. So what do you see as potential problems when you're striving for perfection?
I feel like everybody probably experiences this too, but I have a lot of guilt with food. And I grew up feeling guilty if I didn't eat right, or if I didn't look. I have not one sibling that has a weight problem. None. My mother was 5'3" and she was tiny. And my dad was the same size he was when he graduated high school. And
oh, wow.
My siblings are thin. And so I wasn't the same way. And I wasn't heavy growing up, but I was stocky, muscular, fluffy, if you will. And so I always felt like I was a failure if I didn't do well. And during phase 1, I learned that I had the structure to stay in the program. That really helped, and the support of people doing the same things that I was doing. And it was okay if I fell off the wagon one day, if I got up the next day and I did it better, or I did right back on it. And but I can say that I'm certainly not perfect. And
so Debbie, I'm really curious because, as you said, so falling off the wagon for a day, it was okay as long as I got right back on. So what helped you do that? What helped you get back on, as opposed to saying, I just, it's another thing, I can't do it, I'm not, you know what I mean? So
yes.
What had you not give up but keep going?
Accountability. And my goal when I came into this program was for my health, and to lose the weight so that I felt better so I could be around longer with my family. But having the group there in phase 1 and now I've been in phase 2 for the accountability to know that I'm not the only one. I shouldn't have guilt in falling off the wagon because it's not. It gives me an opportunity to restart, refocus. Okay, I had a bad day. I didn't feel good that day, or it was comfort food, or I was an emotional eater. Funeral came up and there was funeral food everywhere, and something like that. But now I know through this that I can do better, but only because I have been so structured, and now I've flipped a switch and I kind of know how to make that balance work for me better.
Yeah, and Leslie, I just have to read her comment because so many folks, I hear this time and time again when life happens. And you kind of hinted to this too. So she had lost 25 pounds and then badly broke her elbow and had surgery, and just feeling bad, and so leaned on the comfort food, maybe feeling like she couldn't do the physical activity. So if I can't do physical activity, then why should I try anything at all, right? How many times have we been stuck there when I know that I always tell folks, and Nancy, I know you've told me this, you always can do something. So if you can't do physical activity, focus on the calories in, or vice versa. There's always something that you can do. It doesn't have to be all or nothing there.
No, and that's the only thing I had control of at the time I started back was calories in, because I couldn't physically do anything. I ended up not only rebuilding my ankle, but within a year I rebuilt my right knee. And so I had my left ankle, my right knee, and you've got all this immobility going. And so one thing I could control was calories in and maintaining that. So that's really the biggest impetus of me getting back in the program, is the structure.
Emily, let's get you into the conversation here. From you, how can you relate to this? So what happens to you if you end up in that trap of, well, I have to be perfect or why bother type thing?
If I had that attitude, I would have quit HMR this year. Because like I said, my numbers have not been great, and I just have taken the mindset of, something is better than nothing. So the physical activity is what has dropped off the most, just because I am really short on time. So I focus on the fruits and vegetables and meal replacements,
keep your calories lower.
And just eating healthier food.
Yeah, and I know, Emily, you're in my phase 2 class, and I know there have been several times, even through this busy season that you've had, that you have hit over 2,000 calories in physical activity. I know we've celebrated, I think, at least 2 times that you hit the triple imperative, and we really do celebrate, because we know how much effort and time and problem solving you're putting into that. Whereas maybe when you get less busy, you're going to be able to hit 3,000 with no problem, but we have to be where we are.
This really relates to the third perspective we're going to get into in a minute, but I think what you're describing now, I think, and these kind of intermingle anyway, right. But I think another aspect of this, and you mentioned it with the accountability and the group, there's a concept called tolerating the unmet expectations. I think how many people, this really can be an example of the scale, getting on the scale, for example, whether you're in phase 1 or phase 2, and it's not what you want to see, right? And as you mentioned, Debbie, the emotional aspects, our behaviors often come from our emotions.
Right.
And, when we're disappointed or upset, or we don't even want to confront it, those emotions can really end up spiraling us off track. So I wanted to share a post. We did an episode similar to this about a year ago.
David's on.
I know. I'm going to mention that. Okay. David, who's one of our regulars, and he's on tonight. David, I'm sharing your post from a year ago again. because I think this is a great example of this one. So, David wrote, so what do you do when you have a week where you don't lose anything or you even gain a pound back, even though you stayed in the box and did everything right? It happens. It can be debilitating emotionally if you let it be. But know this, it has and does happen. If it hasn't happened with you yet, it will. Your body doesn't know its weigh-in day. It doesn't know that you'd rather it not retain extra fluid and thus a few pounds due to that sinus infection or cold you have. And what about the new medication you had to take for whatever reason? Yep, some of them cause weight gain too, but it's temporary as long as you stick to it and stay in the box. And I think that David's post speaks so well to this whole idea of tolerating. And again, this, the scale can be rough in phase 1. It can be really rough in phase 2, right? Because phase 2 is a lot. It's not as structured. Phase 1, you sort of like, if I'm in the box, I know I'm going to lose weight. I may even have a plateau week or two, but I know it's going to go down. Phase 2, you don't know it's going to go down. So, or what it's going to do. So it almost can be harder, but learning, it's a skill, learning to not react emotionally, but to say, all right, so now what can I do? What can I do? What's next? And keep moving forward is the message. So I think that's really, like, if we leave this perspective and go on to another one, remember David's post, remember the stories Debbie and Emily are mentioning, and this whole idea that if you can tolerate the hard emotions, the sadness, the anger, the frustration, the just sense of resignation, it's hopeless. If you can you have them, but can you somehow have them, but also say, all right, I'm not giving up. I know I can do this. Whatever it is, I get accountability, whatever, but I can't stop, because if I give up, I'm just giving into it, and the inevitable is going to happen. What you don't want to happen is going to happen. So anyway, that's goal number 1, progress, not perfection.
Yeah, and it's all part of the process, the highs and the lows. And so let's go ahead and move on to our next perspective. And this is motivation follows action. And do I have, okay. And so of course, we need to have that motivation initially for someone to maybe get started with making lifestyle changes. We have to have some motivation to get moving in that direction, but we know that motivation only lasts so long. But to continue to be successful, we can't expect to always be motivated. We can't expect to, always want to jump up at 4:30 in the morning and be physically active. We can't always expect that we're going to want to choose that apple over the donuts. We may not be motivated every single time to make those choices. And in this case, how do we stay committed when we're not motivated? So for example, and we're going to hear from Emily, you first, but for an example of, doing 5 minutes of physical activity compared to not doing anything at all. And so, Emily, have you experienced not being motivated? I know that's I'm sure. So not being motivated, but doing something anyway. And if so, can you go ahead and speak to that experience?
Oh, yes. It's been happening for the last month where I just am so worn out. So I have made goals to at least do 10 minutes. I have a Beachbody on demand, membership. And so I can do 10 minutes of insanity and burn 100 calories. And every once in a while, then I find myself finishing the video, because by the time you stretch and it's like, oh, well, there's only 20 minutes left. I think I've got it in me. I'll just finish the video. My work schedule this year has been crazy with lack of teachers and extra duties and stuff.
Substitutes.
So in the past, I have taken advantage of a 10-minute walk at lunch. I don't have that luxury this year, but
Right.
that has also been a, tool in my toolbox,
Mhm.
is just a 10
So
minute walk.
Emily, I'm curious, by the way, so you mentioned exhausted, whatever. All right, I'll do 10 minutes. I'll do 10 minutes. So what happens when you do the 10 minutes? And it's not one of those times where you go on to do the extra 20.
Right.
Better, worse, same than before you started?
Well, I feel better because I don't have that guilt of, oh, I could have done 10 minutes, but instead I just
Went to bed.
sat on the couch,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's 9 o'clock at night, and it's like, well, I've made that commitment to my class, I told
Mhm.
Jennifer that I was gonna work on short bouts, and
Mhm.
so.
And you burn 100 calories, which you wouldn't have done if you sat on the couch. Do you
Yeah.
feel more exhausted because you worked out for 10 minutes?
No.
Probably. I think that's one of the things that always comes to my mind whenever I'm like, oh, I don't want to exercise, I'm tired, I want to sleep, whatever. I'm at a point now where I can say, all right, I know I'm going to feel better if I just
Mhm.
get up and move.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful. And I love that,
Mhm.
it's easy to kind of have that all or nothing mantra, like, well, I used to do 40 minutes. So why
Mhm.
bother? But now
Right.
you're learning that there is a gray area there. Right now, that's what you can do. And there's
Mhm.
so much research to support those short bouts, and
Mhm.
problem solving them. And you're getting a lot of
Mhm.
benefit from that. So I
Mhm.
love that. It's good that you're doing that.
It is. And Debbie, I'm sure you have an example of when you've stayed focused, stayed in action with the healthy behaviors, and then you found that the motivation actually came after. Do you have an example of where you stayed in action, you kept going, even though you didn't want to, and then you found that, hey, I actually want to do more of these things. Do you have an example of that?
That's really more of, like, for instance, with the diet, with the eating program itself,
Mhm.
is because my husband doesn't eat in that program. And
Yep.
he will eat the vegetables I prepare, but he wants different kind of meats, or he wants something to go with it, or we just gotten to where he fixes his and I fix mine. And if I cook something, I'm cooking 2 meals. And that's, as a mom, would be really hard for me, Emily. I know that would have been difficult. We had 5 kids in our home, so I understand.
Mhm.
But now I find that if I'll just keep doing it, and I did for a good while. Right now, I'm not in a good place, so my PT hasn't been as good as it should have been. But and my PA, but I was in physical therapy for so long that made me get up and go to physical therapy. And I hated to see her come right after surgery, because she would come and knock on the door every day and say, here we go. And you've
Mhm.
got to do these exercises. And it was not only for my physical rehab for my injuries, but it was the only physical exercise I was able to get.
Right.
But then when I could start working on my treadmill, it was so freeing. So I would save TV shows, and I wouldn't watch certain series unless I could watch them on the treadmill. And I
Mhm.
would walk, and sometimes I'd walk an hour and not even realize it.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
I still try to do it when I can walk, when I can. And
Mhm.
sometimes the joints don't want to do what they're supposed to do. So I park at the furthest spot in the parking lot and walk into a store. I do those things, go to the big box stores, and I can walk around it a couple of times before I shop. The
Mhm.
things that I can do, I still try to do. And I detest shopping, but I make a point. I could sit here at the computer and have everything delivered, but I try to make a point to go
Yep.
and do that for part of my exercise.
Mhm.
If I don't do anything but go shop, look, that's a good outing for me to get out of the house, because COVID's been great for me. I love staying at home. So it's,
Getting out.
yeah, but getting out is most important. And my daughter will come and walk with me in pretty weather. And
Yeah.
it's so important for me to have a walking partner. It holds
Mhm.
me accountable, makes me do it,
Yep.
and gets me into
And
a routine.
Yeah, I love that. We're about to get into some strategies too about, what can we do if we're feeling like we're not motivated? And what you said, having that accountability buddy, because you may back out on yourself, but you're not going to back out if you've committed to someone else about that. And so, what can we do if we're not really feeling motivated? And it can be easy to get discouraged when we aren't feeling motivated. And so a couple things is we want to make sure not to dwell on not being motivated. So get past that not being motivated and instead focus on what you can do like we've talked about. So get back into those successful strategies that you can do. What is the easiest, simplest, positive thing I can do next? I'm kind of honing in on Coach Sandy. She's actually on. She says that, like, if I'm not motivated or going off track, think about focusing on the easiest, the simplest, and the most positive thing that I can do right now. And the goal is to have it to be doable and also to have you feeling successful. And so, Deb, you talked about having, basically just focusing on what you can do. So even if it's small, it still can make an impact. Emily, how about for you? What is your like next step to help you to either get back on track, or if you're not feeling motivated to have, your eating or your physical activity? What is your go-to can do?
My go-to to get me back on track with healthy eating is a double shake for breakfast with fruit and raw spinach. And that gets the fruits and vegetable numbers, going right away, so that by lunch or dinner, it's not, oh no, I haven't eaten any yet.
Right.
It's like, oh, I've already got 2 to 3 servings, so I might as well, this is easy. I can easily get 2 more with just some snacks and then, dinner.
So if your evening you fell off, you get back on with a double shake with fruits and vegetables. And if your lunch or whatever, you can have a shake for dessert. So getting back into those successful behaviors. So anything that you can do to get back on there, big or small, go for it. So Nancy, are we ready for our third perspective?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment just quickly in the feed, and I apologize. Someone, and it begins with her L, but I don't want to scroll all the way back, but a woman was saying that she had a really bad break in her elbow, and it just was, it's been tough, and she's kind of had the poor me's, and it's caused her to be eating and craving sweets, etc. And because of course she couldn't, wasn't able to do the PA. And I think this community just does what it does. And first of all, acknowledging how brutal that is, but she's getting all kinds of suggestions from people that have figured out how to do PA through injuries. And there's I love this, like the chair. Jennifer mentioned the chair workouts. She mentioned someone I did when I just had surgery in my leg and I couldn't do it. Caroline Jordan, who has a lot of videos for people who are injured, and people going, well, that happened to me and I did this. And so I am confident that she's going to start doing physical activity, with all the problem solving and strategies that people are sharing. And I think that it's just, I think the biggest thing is if you keep, you keep problem solving. Debbie, when you were just describing like all the times you couldn't really exercise other than PT, but then you're figuring out, well, I can go walk at a store and I can walk out to the mailbox and I can't do this yet, but I can do this. And just how do you keep moving your body through space in a safe way, even when you can't do what you want to do? So anyway, I thought I just love the way this community comes together.
I do too.
And helps one another. So all right, so let's move on to the third one. And again, this is sort of a culmination of what we've already been talking about, I think, is really staying in the game is the game, right? And I really do think this is what we're talking about, is not, no matter where you are. And Emily, I think you've really demonstrated this already with, all right now, what I can do is not what I can do at other times in my life. But rather than just say I'm too busy, you're staying in the game,
Right.
right?
Right,
You're
right.
attending, you're keeping records, and you're doing what you can do. So do you, is it worth it to you to, you're tolerating not doing the numbers you used to do, but is it worth it for you to stay in the game right now, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, because I know that when I have stopped HMR and, I've tried to just keep records by myself, use that by myself, and without the classes, without the weekly check-in, I'm not as successful. And so, I don't want to lose what momentum I have gained. And it's interesting, when the weight does creep back up, the threshold gets less and less each time. I used to, it was like 150 pounds, just felt really awful, and then it was like 147 felt really awful. And now it's like 145, 144 feels really awful, and you can, without even the scale, you just can feel it, and the clothes don't fit the same. And so I just didn't want to experience that. And it's
that's
good.
another,
that long-term change.
You're focusing on it, and you're also turning it around sooner. So you're not gaining, the 5-7 pounds and then doing something about it. Like, you start doing something about it sooner than what you had been.
Yeah.
I think, as somebody that's been around for a long time with this, and, we had Rita on, for example, who's, really even longer term. This is where time is involved in this. And you ladies both are perfect examples of that, where, I hate to say it out loud, but weight gain is part of phase 2. It happens, but it's a learning experience. And of course, again, if you're staying in the game, you're much more likely to turn it around. Certainly, stop the weight gain sooner, turn it around more quickly than you would if you left the program. But I also love, Emily, that, your fluctuations are narrowing. And that's also a sign of more and more skills and being able to react sooner and sooner and turn it around. So great example. And then Deb, what's your perspective on this? Because you've shared some as well.
Yeah, for me, I think it's staying in the phase 2 for me this time, for whatever reason. And I think because I was looking at it as a long-term health solution and not just as a weight loss. And I think last time that's probably where I was, and I didn't really focus on, sticking with the long-term plan for me and really getting where I need to be and how to utilize all the tools in the toolbox that I have. And now, like, we had company come stay with us a couple of weeks ago, and I knew we would go out to eat 2 or 3 nights while they were here. So I made a plan. Planning is the key thing for me. I have to plan. I have to plan every day. I never leave without a piece of fruit, the bar in my purse. Never do. And usually I have an entree in the console and a bottle of water. I mean, it's just the way I travel. And so that I don't get caught out. And I do follow a lot of my phase 1 practices all the time. I just do. So when we were planning on going out in the evenings, I would stick really, really close to all the box all day long so that I could expend the extras that maybe I wanted to by getting, little extra salt with the chicken or with, whatever I ordered out, because I knew that was going to affect my scale reading. But I weigh every morning without fail. I don't, and I have crazy swings in my weight because I retain a lot of fluid because of my joint. And so I can have a 6-pound swing.
Talk about tolerating the scale, Deb, right?
Right. So you just, you can't lose your mind over it. You can't feel guilty every time it jumps up a pound or 2. I stop and evaluate. Okay, was it something I ate? Did I have excess salt, or did I get something that I too many BLTs, and bites, taste and licks. And did I do something that I shouldn't have done, or is this my body just reacting this time? And then I drink a lot of water. I stay in the box, and if the scale usually flops right back to where it was the next day. But I can tell, and my body's real sensitive to weather changes. Last 2 or 3 weeks have been a dream, if you like Stephen King novels, but it's not been easy. And so it's something that if I didn't have this stability to fall back on and these tools that I've gotten, I couldn't do this long term. And that's the only way I'm going to be able to handle my life and my health long term, is keeping these tools in place. And I know that now. And
I'm hearing a couple of things, Deb. First of all, a saying that we say a lot that's really potent, which is remember your why. And you clearly have a lot of health reasons for wanting to maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Yes.
Emily, you've certainly got your family and yourself and whatever. And what I'm hearing, is it's interesting because you did the program, you lost 60 pounds. I think you were in phase 2 for a little bit and then left. But one of the things you said to us, like, I'm committed to staying here this time. And I think, again, hindsight, it's just sometimes you just learn as you go along. And now I think you probably appreciate phase 2 even more and really get that, with the why that you have, being, that again, that insurance policy of it's worth, not everybody is going to get coaching, that's not everybody. I'm not saying that everybody has to take on coaching, but for a lot of people, it really is, it's kind of the glue that holds it all together. And
and one point that's really important when you're thinking of the staying in the game, is the game, that perspective is that we have to realize that there is not a destination to the work that we're doing. There's not a point where, oh, I hit my go weight, I'm not going to have to worry about this anymore. Or like, we're always going to have to be working at it. And at times it may be more challenging than others. But, when you're working on changing your lifestyle and specific behaviors, we're always going to be a work in progress. Always. And so to have that kind of expectation that it's just always going to have to be there if you want to kind of accomplish what you want to accomplish.
And that goes
and if you do end up leaving the program, well, go ahead, Deb. No, go ahead, Deb.
It goes back to that. You're never going to be perfect either.
No.
Yeah.
And that, don't beat yourself up or feel guilty because you can't do exactly what the person next to you. I've been most inspired by the falling off the wagon, getting back on, stick-to-itive, long-term people have motivated me the most. I really, truly admire them because it's not easy, and they have made a commitment for the long haul.
It's hard work. This is hard work. But when you think about your life now versus what it was, Emily, you think of the future you have and how you've had a quality of life all along, you choose your battles. And this is, you both have clearly made the decision that the hard work's worth it to you.
Yeah, right. And I know, Nancy, you were, I think, about to mention this, but if you're not in coaching, or if you step away from the program, you can always come back. We are going to welcome you back with open arms, and you're not going to be judged. We are here to support you, to help you to keep going. And if you're feeling like you're struggling, lean into our HMR community. I think it was, I just lost the lady that was struggling with her PA. She finally said, okay, I'm going to march in place for the rest of this video. So she,
all right, I love it.
Encouragement.
All right.
To do it.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, right. And so lean into the Facebook group. If you're in a coaching session, show up for your coaching sessions, as well as, if you're really, really struggling, say it. Because how many folks Did you just see in that example on the feed that, oh, when this happened to me, this is what I did? You're going to have people that can relate to you. And it's the best way to kind of reset that button too, is to either see success, hear it, or hear that encouragement to keep you going. And so as we're kind of wrapping things up, we do have our kind of 3 perspectives for us to consider. We have, let me just show them again. And where did it go? Let's see. I'm going to share my screen, but I have to change slides. So the important perspectives that we want you all to really kind of keep in mind, and of course, be thinking of the one that really resonates with you. The goal is progress, not perfection. So that was the first perspective. The second is motivation follows action. So we have to be in action to kind of get even more motivated after the initial motivation may wear off. And then staying in the game is the game. So staying in it no matter what. And so share which one really resonates with you. Write it down, hang it up, put fireworks around it, whatever you need to do when you fall into those tough times to remind you of that it's all part of the process and that it's going to happen. But make sure you're being kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace and remember that you're not alone. We're all in this together. We're all here for you. And we want to thank each of you for joining us tonight, as well as Emily. We have so appreciated you joining our community and sharing your stories and your tips. So thank you very much, Debbie and Emily. And make sure you tune in for our next live event. So mark your calendars. It's going to be Thursday, March the 10th. So have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.